In this video, we're going to go over the steps in Lab 3A, discussing window closing callback function, and also talk about static class data members and static functions, as well as non-static member functions and variables. So the set of topics for this week is right here. Generally, it's just a review of function call and return, and of course member functions of classes. So I'd encourage you to review these handouts, and this of course is our handout for this lab. So in this lab we're going to explore the mechanism by which full-text library invokes our program handlers for all sorts of user actions. And these actions could be mouse clicks or keyboard strokes on a keyboard. So the mechanism of communication between full-text library and our own application code is called callback functions. So we're going to provide our callback functions and then specify them as the handlers that we would like to invoke when the user takes an action. So to create callback, our program has to have two parts. We need to define the callback function, which is just a function that we can have, and attach the function to a widget or a window. So window itself is a widget in definition of full-text library, and of course it can also be interacted with by the user, like minimize, maximize, closed. And so by default the closing button hides the window and returns from FLRun in case if this was the last visible window in the application. So because in our application FLRun handles the interaction with the user, if the main function returns from FLRun, it means that the application is simply exiting, at least the way it's handled right now in our current version of the code. So this default unconditional exit out of FLRun means that the application is shutting down. And so this default action may be unacceptable if user has entered some sort of unsaved information, and perhaps we would like to warn the user that they have some unsaved data, and we could let them go back to allow them to either save or discard the unsaved information. So we begin by copying Visual Studio project, and the prototype for this lab is our previous lab 3. So my directory structure right here, I have already opened our downloaded C255 labs, and under labs we have our laboratory exercises. So here I have a directory that contains my window class, so I'm just going to review it. And I will actually delete this .vs subfolder, which contains all sorts of Visual Studio information that I really don't need to preserve. So I'm just going to press Shift Delete on my keyboard, and this allows me to permanently delete the folder. So I'm just going to delete that. So now I will make a copy of it. So back to the labs, just right click. This is a zip file. I can now delete that as well. And I will copy and paste this in the same directory and use the proposed name for the next lab. All right, so rename, and this is our lab 3A. So very much similar setting to begin with. So let's open this in Visual Studio. And I will copy this location from my file manager to open this lab project, and this is my solution file. So normally we'll go to View, Solution Explorer, and here I would like to rename the previous project name and solution name also with this. So just right click these items and say rename, and likewise this one also rename it to be Lab 3A. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add window closing callback function to our demo window class. So if you recall, our previous setting was that in the source subfolder of our project, we created a header file that contains definition of the so-called demo window, which is deriving itself from the fluid window. So I'll just drag and drop it right here in my environment. Before I make any changes, I will probably also rename the main file and just copy and paste the same thing, just to be consistent with the name of the project. So here we have two classes. One is called fluid window. Of course, this code for fluid window class somewhere in our application is generated by fluid. And here we have our own class defined right here. Inside this demo window class, we have this member function named show. Okay, so this is our the only member function that we have so far. And of course, because we inherit everything from fluid window, at runtime these two boxes present just one object. And here inside fluid window we have this WinApp member pointer to an actual FLTK window. So when we're running, FLTK window is yet another object in memory that that we communicate with. So this WinApp sits right here. We just use it in this class because we inherit everything from here is like one box at runtime. So this allows us to call show this function show, which belongs to FLTK double window, I believe, and we tell this window to go ahead and make the actual user window visible on user screen. Okay, so when I'm talking about all of this, this is the user screen with the window with the closing button and currently the empty window. So this combination of these two classes, our own demo window and fluid generated class, at runtime this is one object, right? So at runtime this becomes one object that contains everything that both of these things contains. This is fluid window object class, and this is not an object. This is just a visible window on computer screen, which is controlled by fluid double window. So this is double window fluid fluid object. So we already discussed that when we load our program into computer memory, our objects are loaded into memory, and basically all the data, okay, all the data and executable code. So this will be perhaps like a text segment, and this is the data segment. You already know that the text segment is the segment that contains all executable code. So this function show is going to be compiled, and when it's generated, its memory allocation is somewhere in the text segment. Okay, so this box perhaps represents the show function somewhere in computer memory. At the same time, of course, this fluid window has, for instance, this WinApp pointer to a double window object. So this pointer, WinApp, as an example, of course, will be allocated as part of this entire object in memory, somewhere in the data segment, right? Rather, because I think we create this window on the stack, it will be in the stack segment, but it doesn't matter. The important thing is that it's not the same memory segment as the code segment, which is called text. Historically, text segment is the name of the segment that contains executable code. And the global data segment and the stack segment and heap are all these areas where I say these are all data segments. And yet, at runtime, this member function show that belongs to demo seems without any kind of trouble is able to find this WinApp pointer to another object in memory. So how does it work? Well, it works because every member function, when it executes, has a hidden data member, or rather, it's a hidden variable in its memory. It's a local variable. You can think about it this way, that is pointing to the location of our object in the data segment. Okay, so this is something that you don't see. And of course, when compiler compiles this code, it finds WinApp. So instead of complaining that this is an undeclared local variable, it immediately decides to check whether it could be something that present in our class member data members. And so of course, WinApp is found inside definition of the fluid window. So when the code is compiled, it is compiled in such way that in reality that this pointer to the location of our entire object in memory somewhere here, okay, and WinApp is just one data variable in there. It uses this pointer to find this location of this object, right, which contains WinApp as the data member, to be able to use that then to call show function of another object, right, which is also somewhere in this memory. So this piece right here is a key point that we need to talk about right now. So basically, this is equivalent to saying this, I have my caps on, so this WinApp show. Okay, so this will be exactly the same idea. Most of the time you never do something like this, but this is that hidden pointer to the inside every non-static member function in our classes that provides access to the location of our object somewhere in computer memory where it's allocated. So let's kind of trace through this by opening Solution Explorer. Let's take a look at the main function. Okay, so I'll just do it side by side view, and here you can see what is happening is that the main function creates this object. We call it window. Of course, it's demo window, but because demo window inherits from fluid window, everything is put together. And then this is a normal local variable object inside the main function. So we use the member access operator, the period or dot operator, to call this function show. And so this function is invoked. But what we don't see here is that this window, the address of this window, is passed here in this keyword this, or it's like a variable available in every member function, which actually contains the address of this object that we just created. So, like I said, if we explicitly provide it, compiler will say, okay, of course I know what this is. It's the address of the object for which the show function was invoked, right? So this window is, the address of this window is given to every member function, right? So if we provide it this way. But if we don't provide it, just use it the way it was originally, again, it will attempt to look if WinApp is a local variable inside this member function show, which it is not. So it will search inside our class for any data member named WinApp. And this is how it gets resolved.